Hello and welcome to the inaugural edition of the Boston Bros, a new political show with unvarnished opinions based on fact. We own fact, right?
We own fact.
The victors
Not only fact,
write the history.
We're going to go beyond fact. We're going to go into truth.
Well, that's something new, I think, especially in this climate with the inauguration coming up of the 47th president of the United States, Donald Trump. You see my button? Do you like
I
my
see your button, right.
47. There haven't been too many pros with that number that have had great success, number 47. You know, but I think 47 is going to become a very valuable number over the next 4 years.
We'll add a couple of digits and we'll play it in the lottery.
Yeah. So I'm Jim Campanini, former editor of the Lowell Sun, and this is Peter Lucas. He's an opinion columnist for the Boston Herald. He wrote for the Lowell Sun when I was the editor there for 14 years. And then just disappeared when the Sun went from being an independent newspaper, I guess, to a left-wing newspaper or something. They didn't want another viewpoint in the paper. I don't know, Peter, but it's the Sun people who still get the Sun miss your column. I know.
Well, I miss doing it for the Sun, but, you know, you have to move on when you have to move on.
Yeah. So let's talk a little about Donald Trump. And, you know, he's the only president with his own winery and his own champagne. So we're just going to have a little of this. What do you think of that? I mean, you think there should be more like Obama didn't have a winery.
Well, I'll
Clinton
tell you.
didn't have it. They own everything else, I guess.
It looks pretty good.
It is pretty good. The winemaker, Jonathan Wheeler, we've talked about this on my wine show several times. You know, he's a world-class winemaker, and this is a Blanc de Blanc. So I just want to celebrate peaceful transition of power. These nice glasses from the Trump Winery. Yeah, it's beautiful, beautiful. So what do you think?
Let me tell you something. A taste of this and you'll be singing with the village people. YMCA.
Wow. I just can't wait to see all these inauguration parties, they're dancing. I mean, people are going to be, they're excited. They're happy. At least half of America is. And I don't know why the other half isn't. Okay. They should share in the fun. But you know, this is what bothers me. 4 years ago, I didn't vote for Biden. I'm an independent, but I didn't vote for Biden. And yet, when Biden was elected, you know, as an American, you want the president to succeed. You jump on board. I didn't like. I started off right off bat. I didn't like any of his policies, but I didn't want ill will of the man. But gradually during those 4 years of disaster, one after another, I just couldn't wait for change. And it didn't matter whether Donald Trump ran for the president or someone else did. I mean, if I had to vote for Robert Kennedy, I would have voted for Robert Kennedy if he was the only other choice on the ballot. That's how bad it was.
Donald Trump is going to accomplish astonishing things. There's a lot to make up for. We're coming off a president who, in my estimation, is the worst in my lifetime. And another term of Joe Biden, we wouldn't have a country left. And I think the incoming of Donald Trump is probably equivalent to when Ronald Reagan first came on the scene and how he lifted the spirit and the morale of the country and put the United States back on top in world affairs and improved the economy of the United States. And I think Donald Trump is going to do the same thing. I think he is another Ronald Reagan. And I think he's become president just in time to help save democracy.
Well, they've been using him as if he was anti-democracy, and yet everything that he stood for and the people who voted for, they just turned off after all these efforts to suppress the truth about a lot of issues, which were coming out now. All these lawsuits, the 51 CIA and intelligence official who signed before the last election, signed the dossier that's saying that the Russian hoax and Trump was involved and all these unsavory things, and none of them have been called to accountability. You know, and the Mar-a-Lago raid, the first time in U.S. history a former president's house was raided, and the way they did it, and censoring people who were Trump supporters, and even denying Melania Trump and Barron, her son, checking
Jim,
accounts.
all that stuff is true. But for the sake of the country, I hope President Trump forgets all that stuff.
Yeah, I hope so too.
And doesn't go on the path of revenge and opens up a different new era for the country and establishes the democracy the way we're supposed to have it. Let your enemies walk away, forget it, and leave vengeance to somebody else, not to the President of the United States.
You know, that's great advice, and I hope he follows that, and I hope his cabinet, the new members. I heard a term today in one of the columnists in the New York Post wrote, and it said it seems like it's going to be government by the middle finger. Well, half of his cabinet, he said, were people who were targets
Jim,
of
Jim,
government investigations.
That's rude, crude, and stupid.
Yeah,
That is a hell of a way to govern. I mean, governing that way is going to lead to disaster.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but a lot of these people who were appointed are people that are going to try to right the course, refine that balance that's been lost, it seems, over the last 4 years.
well, I'd like to see him start with the military, reforming the military, and of course, illegal immigration.
Mm. Well, that's a big issue. So what are your thoughts on the immigration issue and what's going to transpire here?
Well, I was intrigued by the battle between the governor of New Hampshire, 𝐏𝐞𝐭𝐞𝐫, and Governor Healey of Massachusetts regarding the issue. You may have noticed that the governor of New Hampshire, in her inaugural address, took a few shots, a few jabs at Maura Healey over the disaster of the immigration problem in Massachusetts. And I think 𝐏𝐿𝐿 was on the right track.
Mm.
Did you read her comment?
Yeah, she said, let Massachusetts be a cautionary tale. We don't want to. And I guess that struck a lot of nerves because you have the Boston media that came out right away and supported Healey, and they went after 𝐏𝐿𝐿, who was a former attorney general, just like Maura Healey.
Right.
She was the attorney general of New Hampshire, and Maura Healey, was the attorney general.
Jim, there's
of
a reason
Massachusetts.
our neighbors in New Hampshire do not have an immigration problem like we do. And the reason is they don't have these outrageous benefits that anybody walking into Massachusetts from anywhere in the world is entitled to for some strange reason. And that's why we're overrun with immigrants, illegal and criminal illegal immigrants, as well as other normal immigrants.
Well, the other thing is, too, I mean, New Hampshire, I've often found to be, a very well-run state and compassionate, but they're not a sanctuary state. They didn't go down that road that Massachusetts basically, with a proliferation of cities, declaring themselves to be sanctuary cities or sanctuary this. So you open the door for that, and then, you invite this, and then you have no plan for when you're overwhelmed. And that was the problem right from the beginning. We're struggling to take care of our own citizens, our own residents with our housing needs, and yet you open yourself up to this exploitation.
I think it's a myth that Massachusetts is a sanctuary state, because I don't believe it is. When we go back, in 1983, we passed legislation to deal with homelessness in Massachusetts. It was, I know because I covered it. I go back that far. And Governor Dukakis signed it. Under the statute, which is in effect today, is that no one coming to Massachusetts strictly to receive benefits, welfare benefits, is a resident of the state. And if you're not a resident of the state, you're not qualified to get welfare benefits. That's the law. However, it's not been enforced. Healy has said that she's going to revisit this so-called sanctuary situation. But you don't have to revisit. All you have to do is read the law. Chapter 450 of the Acts of 1983, signed to Dukakis by Governor Dukakis, and I was there when he signed it because I covered it.
But Peter, this comes up as a common occurrence in Massachusetts. Laws aren't enforced, and then it only gets comes to the surface when there's a crisis. Okay, whether it's the public transportation system, like this now with immigration. The only reason why we're looking at this and scrutinizing everything with immigration now is because of the $1.2 billion that we can't afford, that we've already paid for shelters and keeping these people safe and secure, and taking over hotels, public facilities, hiring out.
Jim, it is not only the money that we're spending taking care of illegal and immigrants, it's the criminal faction that has come into the state as a result of this so-called, quote, sanctuary state with all these wonderful benefits. And you can witness it almost weekly. There's some sort of young illegal immigrant from the Dominican or Venezuela being arrested on charges of rape, or sodomy, or drunkenness, erratic behavior in one of these
possession of
overpopulated
illegal guns,
hotels. It's out of hand.
Well, but why aren't the and I say the ruling class, because the Democrats control the legislature, they control the states. Why are they so slow to react? I mean, people in neighborhoods, people are feeling this. They're seeing it every day, and yet it doesn't seem to be getting through what is happening at street level.
I don't think politicians, particularly in Massachusetts, have yet to process what happened in the last election, how Donald Trump wiped out the Democratic Party. And you can visit this in the vote in the Congress last week on the so-called Laken-Riley Act. You can explain what that is, can't you?
Well, Laken-Riley was a nursing student from Georgia, 22 years old. She would have turned 23 years old last week. She went out for a run, and she was attacked while she was doing her run by an illegal immigrant from Venezuela. He had been in this country illegally. He had been previously deported. He had a record from Venezuela, a criminal record. He was allowed to come into this country. He evaded prosecution. He did have a court date. And he just fell through the cracks, never showed up, I guess. And he murdered her. He raped her and he murdered her. And that's what was the genesis of the Laken-Riley Act.
And because of that, the legislators filed legislation called the Laken-Riley Act to arrest immigrants, illegal criminal immigrants, arrested for shoplifting, burglary,
yes,
these so-called minor crimes, once committed and once charged and once arrested and adjudicated, they are subject to deportation.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. He should have been detained at the border, and then when his first arrest occurred, I think he was originally in New York, then he moved back to Georgia. He was on the run from New York.
His name was Jose Ibarra.
Ibarra.
And he had been arrested for shoplifting. Had the Laken-Riley Act been in effect, he would have been deported.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
He would have at least been detained.
All right.
Okay, and then
he would have been
ICE,
subject to
that's
deportation.
right. ICE would have at least taken control and stuff.
So what's wrong with the Democratic Party? In Massachusetts, 8 of the 9 members of the House, all Democrats, voted against the bill.
Yes.
In other words, they voted for illegal immigration and against protecting regular citizens. The only congressman who voted for it was Steve Lynch of South Boston. And both Eddie Markey, our two senators, Eddie Markey and Elizabeth Warren, also voted against the bill when it came to the Senate. By contrast, the two representatives from New Hampshire, Greg Pappas and
Maggie Goodlander.
they voted for it, as did the two senators from New Hampshire,
Yes.
both Democrats.
Yeah.
Senator Hassan and Senator, what's her name?
The new, who's the new? Shaheen.
Shaheen. They
yes.
both.
Very common sense.
Well, that's the contrast between New Hampshire's approach and Massachusetts' approach.
But here's the thing. You read the comments.
We should read the roll call of the reps
Well-
who voted against that bill in Massachusetts.
Well, first of all, the vote was 264 to 159. 48 Democrats joined with all 216 Republicans to vote for the bill. 159 Democrats voted against it because they said, most of them said, including our 5th District Congresswoman, Lori Trahan, said that it took away due process rights.
Yeah, but what about the due process for Lincoln Riley?
That's right. I mean, what about protecting your citizens first? Okay, and then as for the victims, why do they go overboard? I mean, if you shouldn't be in this country in the first place because you crossed illegally. You had a criminal record coming into this country, and then you knowingly just commit crimes leading up to the bigger crime of murder, aggravated rape, and a young woman with a promising career is dead. Now, you're right. There were 6 other Democrat congressmen throughout New England, just the New England states, who voted for the Lake and Raleigh Act. Two from Connecticut, Joe Courtney and Johanna Hayes. Okay, we already have Chris Pappas and Maggie Goodlander, and also a Maine Democrat, Jared Golden. And Steve Lynch made a great point, which has been lost by some of our politicians nowadays. We've been talking about immigration reform for 20 years. There's got to be a starting point of it. There's got to be a dialogue. And he said, this is from Stephen Lynch, who voted for the Lake and Riley Act. I believe we have lost control of the immigration process in this country. Lynch said, we no longer have the ability to regulate and discern who is allowed to enter our country. We also seem to be uncertain what the consequences will be when someone who is unlawfully present in our country breaks the law. While far from perfect, House passage of the Lake and Riley Act begins to engage on those issues and attempts to bring greater certainty and clarity to that process. So here's Lynch saying what a lot of people have said in Washington, while far from perfect. Now you go in, you start the conversation, you work with your colleagues to try to come up with something that will be viable, that will cross all the T's and dot the I's. But no, when you just turn your back to a practical start at a solution like Massachusetts, that's why we're so out of touch, And
all right, out of touch. Here's who voted against the bill in Massachusetts: members of the U.S. House. Representative Catherine Clark of Revere, Richard Neal of Springfield, James McGovern of Worcester, Laurie Trehane of Westford, Jake Auchincloss of Newton, Seth Moulton of Salem, and Anna Presley of Boston, and William Keating of Bourne. Hooray, hooray.
Yeah. Well, it's just, I mean...
They're in my column. They're in my next political column, by the way.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. After the vote, I couldn't even find it. I had to go onto the Congressional Register to find
Well, the papers don't print roll calls anymore.
The Boston Globe didn't even cover a story on it until 3 days after the vote was taken. I had to find the story in the New York Post, and then the Boston Herald wrote the story. But no one talked.
The Globe is not going to print any story that's detrimental to Democrats.
I know.
Believe me, I worked there for 2 years. Yeah. Before I quit. In fact,
this
it was
is
the
a
worst 2 years.
safety
The
issue.
2 years I spent in the U.S. Army was happier than the 2 years I spent in the Globe.
But Peter, this is such a vital issue, along with the economy, being important. But You've got 80 shelters in 80 different communities across Massachusetts. And then there's a story came out last week that there have been 1,000 aggravated assaults, thefts, robberies, rapes in these shelters. This is other news that was suppressed. The Boston Globe wrote the story this past week, and also the Boston Herald. I mean, no one knew about it. I mean, the people who live in those communities heard about it. But you know what? Because of these activists are so strong, they're saying, oh, well, they're just not all legal immigrants doing this. There's some legal immigrants. Okay, that's fine. But you got to protect them, too.
Well,
you got to protect the immigrants
Jim,
who in this
the
shelter.
quality of life in Massachusetts and elsewhere has declined significantly. Not only that, the aura of protection, of individual protection, walking the street with secure sense of being is being questioned because we're being overwhelmed. And the political establishment, such as it is been unable to cope with it.
Well, it's just, I applaud Congressman Stephen Lynch for taking his stand. I'm just surprised that he hasn't been picketed from nonprofit and refugee groups and other groups. Let them try to do that in Southie, I guess. But for his stance that he took in these other congressmen and women from Massachusetts, I'm just so disappointed in them, I know Lori personally. She's a great person and very smart. And I go back to Marty Meehan. When I covered him and at the Sun, and he used to tell me, Jim, before you write that editorial, bashing me, he says, think about it. Every once in a while, leadership comes down with a vote and they say, well, you got to hold your nose on this one. But if you want something for your district, it's that's the way politics works.
Well, the end result is they ended up voting for illegal criminal immigrants over legal Massachusetts citizens.
Exactly.
That's
so you
the
put
bottom line.
That's the bottom line.
That's why I get paid these big bucks,
Well, I hope people recognize what is going on and why certain things are happening in their communities, and this is it. You can't ignore these issues when they come up. How do you get a solution if you don't start the conversation? Now, this is going to the Senate this week for a vote. Already, 3 Democrat senators have said that they're going to vote for it. I think that the Republicans need 6.
They had 2 votes so far.
Yeah,
in the Senate.
procedural. Procedural.
And the last one was 84 for the bill, 10 Democrats against the bill, including our 2 senators.
Yeah. So I mean, they are so out of touch, but it's about time people wake up to that. So anyway, that's enough on Lake and Riley. I hope the bill does become law and starts a conversation for maybe a broader immigration policy that we've lacked. And I hope that the Democrats and Republicans can come together and work together on something and finally come up with a solution.
Well, let's hope so. But
well, I think Trump is going to push hard for it. Don't you?
Well, he's got a lot of things he's got to push hard on. This is one of them, but this is one of the most important. Also, he's got to deal with a brand new problem. That's a fire that's burning up California.
Yeah.
There's another issue, that a lack of management by the Democrat establishment that's been running California for, the last 10, 12, 20 years? And the place is a mess.
Mm-hmm. Well, my question there is, and, everybody's pointing the finger, blame at the governor, the mayor. Okay, take all that away. I was just concerned about looking at the TV and you hear about these fires once a year, every year for the last 10 years, and you say, why were they so unprepared for something like
Astonishing.
this?
Astonishing.
I mean, it just keeps going on and on and on and on. And I mean, from airplanes not being ready to the fire retardant, no water in the hydrant. No. I mean, it's just lack of resources.
And we can be critical of the state of Massachusetts, but let me tell you something. It's about the best place in the world to live. No floods, no forest fires, no earthquakes. I mean, we get a little snow now and then, and that's about it. And you look at the events that take place elsewhere across the country and the world, and here we are in cozy little Massachusetts. Nothing much happens. But even the little that does happens, the politicians screw it up.
Yeah. Well, no, you're right. I love Massachusetts. It's my home. But we do perpetuate some disasters on ourselves. Now, one of the things I heard on a couple of radio programs, Massachusetts is bubbling up at the legislature. They're thinking about having our own congestion tax or congestion pricing, which they started in New York. And of course, once again, all those environmentalists are behind, and these activists are behind, and been pushing EV cars and solar for years and everything. They're all behind. This would be good for you, right? They always know what's in the best for you, rather than just, I want to be left alone to make my own decisions.
My proposal is much simpler. Given the traffic in Boston, which is a nightmare all the time, my proposal is to pay people money to stay out of Boston.
That would be a great.
Right.
That'd be a
That's
great.
my proposal.
Yeah, no, that'd be good. But you brought up the point, and I think you wrote it in your column. So look at this Laken-Riley vote. I don't keep bringing it up, and how the delegation voted. Okay, overwhelmingly against. Who is going to be that conduit for the Trump administration? I mean, Governor Healy needs $4 billion to build the bridges down at Cape Cod, and it seems like, that money train has dropped off. There's not a Democrat in the White House anymore. They don't control Congress anymore. So how are we going to become diplomatic? I mean, she's already trying to roll back some of the rhetoric.
It's going to be very interesting because she's been a major critic of Donald Trump. And everybody knows when she was Attorney General and Trump was president the first term, she sued him 100 times. That's 25 suits a year. And 13 of those suits were in opposition to what he was doing at the border, securing the border. Now she's governor and she has to try and make nice with Trump. Good luck with that. But in addition to that, her successor as Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, has now also come out in opposition to Trump, threatening to sue him if Trump does something that she doesn't like. This is like Maura Healey 2. Yeah. Maura Healey revisited.
Yeah, Maura Healey filed 100 lawsuits against Trump during her term as Attorney General. Did any of those go to trial or anything?
Well, they claim a 70% victory. It was more like 7%.
Yeah, and then I think Andrea Campbell. I mean, here it is. My first question. The Globe wrote the story about how she's hiring staff, and people are calling her on the phone. They want to join her staff to fight Trump.
She should hire Jack Smith.
Yeah,
he's got to work now.
But here's the lack of logic. I mean, where did she get the money? First of all, to hire all these people, okay, and shouldn't she be hiring people to prosecute Stewart hospitals, the people behind Stewart hospitals, and these other for-profit hospitals, that organizations that have driven the Massachusetts medical system close to bankruptcy?
Forget that for 1 second.
Because it's not a sexy story?
You think she's a chief law enforcement officer, in quotes, in Massachusetts. You'd think she'd be in the forefront of protecting citizens by going after criminal, illegal immigrants who have committed crimes like rape, robbery, and so on. But the only people going against it, dealing with the illegal immigrant community, the criminal community, has been the U.S. Attorney's Office, not the Attorney General.
Well, you know what? I think Andrea Campbell, she continues on this course, she will become the Alvin Bragg of Massachusetts.
Well, okay? I don't know. Was Alvin Bragg in favor of defunding the police?
I think he was.
Andrew Healy was
Yeah.
when she ran for mayor of Boston. So
Yeah. So we know how that's turned out. He just wanted to get a conviction for Trump, and he changed the law to do it. And the only person who was ever charged under that law in New York State that they convicted Trump on business, business practices and paying a non-disclosure agreement to a former escort, I guess. I don't know, but crazy stuff, really. So, well, what else is on your mind?
I want another drink.
You want another drink? Let's have it. Have it. So,
I want another drink. Then we can break out like the Village People
Well-
and end the show with a happy song about the YMCA and young man.
any thoughts on the confirmation process? Do you think all of Trump's
think that-
nominees are going to be?
Yeah, I think once Hegseth goes through, which I think he will, I think they'll all go through.
Yeah.
Trump is going to be very difficult to oppose this time around because the Republicans have a majority in the Senate and a very slim majority in the House, although it's the Senate that makes the confirmation of these appointments.
I read Pete Hegseth's book, War on Warriors.
Yeah, I do too, yeah.
You did too. I mean, very clear. No, you know how some of these liberals like to write with all kinds of adjectives in their books. It was all fact based, and a lot of it was based on his own experience as a combat veteran.
Right.
You know, he won 2 Bronze Stars in Iraq and Afghanistan, but he puts it right out there in plain fact. So, you know, if they're going to attack him for his thoughts and words, I mean, they're right there for everybody to see in America where he stands, how he feels. He's not going to hold back or obfuscate anybody. So, you know, I think, and his big point is that the military, the U.S. military, has gone woke. You had a great line from his book in the column, and you served in the military and fought in wars, and he said how in World War II, 21 million men cycled through the U.S. military during World War II. We only had 4,000 4-star generals. He says right now we have 1.2 million men, I think, men and women.
He said there were only 4 4-star generals
4 4-star generals.
in World War II.
4. Okay.
Now we have 44.
44. Yeah, 4-star generals.
With a military that's
1.2 million.
1.2 million compared to almost 20 million.
And he said a lot of these generals on the training for the battlefield and stuff, they're doing DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, okay? Training the Air Force cadets how to march with the pride flag.
And what he said, DEI under his administration will be DIE.
Yes, that's what he said. So it's he wants to clean that up, and he says the U.S. military is a killer force. That's what people are trained for: defend America, defend America's interests all across the globe. We're not supposed to be talking about pronouns in the trenches. Okay, we're supposed to be talking about killing the enemy or protecting our interests and our citizens. And so, you know what? I'm all for it. You know,
So
I'm all
am I.
for it. So we'll see how that turns out. Okay. Before we close the show, any predictions on or what to look for in the near future or the far future?
Right off the bat, I would expect Donald Trump to end that war in Ukraine and also the war in the Mideast. That's what I would expect him to do right off the bat. I know we talked about illegal immigration and what he's going to do about that. But foreign policy is very interesting because there were no wars during Donald Trump's first term. They only began under Joe Biden. And I think Donald Trump will end those 2 wars through negotiations, not military involvement, but through negotiations, he'll bring an end to that war and bring peace back.
Very good. That would be great for the entire world.
Yes.
And I think the other threat is on the horizon, especially with the cyber attacks, is China, and something's gonna happen there where I think we have to open up these lines of communication and. I don't know, build up the Taiwan Straits again. I hate to see anything go to a confrontation, and I don't think that will happen, but we have to get some serious negotiations.
The other thing he's
going.
done, he's created a great comeback for the village, for the
The village people.
the village singers there.
Yeah,
What's the name?
Yeah, the village people, right?
Yeah, the village people.
YMCA. Everybody's doing it. I mean, I just love the videos.
They may be the national anthem under Trump.
I've got one for you. I've been thinking about this long and hard, and I know there have been some stories written about Governor Healy, staying on for a second term. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that I think that. Maura Healy has had enough of this job, and I think some people are already lining up to push her out. Okay, I heard one story about a prominent Democrat making phone calls to other leading Democrats throughout Massachusetts and some fundraisers and stuff. Now, would this person jump in if Maura doesn't? If she decides to stay on, maybe not, but I think that there's already something building just below that surface.
Well, I think there's no Republican of any stature who can defeat Maura Healy despite her problems. Her problem may come in a Democrat primary, but I don't see any prominent Democrat at this point getting ready to challenge her.
Well, just watch that, okay? And also watch your real estate transactions for your community, because if someone new moves into your neighborhood with a prominent name, okay, there might be something on the horizon. So, any closing thoughts, Peter?
Yeah, let's have some more Trump wine here.
Okay. Well, until the next Boston Bros show, have a great week. Enjoy the Trump inauguration.